say. I wonder if I could get you to talk about going cross country with Grandpa. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to give you a little backstory here. So from 1977 to 1988, I traveled from New York to San Francisco a dozen times. A close friend of mine moved out there in 1980, and actually he and I had hitchhiked and done one of these driveway cars the first time in 1977. So I went out to San Francisco over the New Year's holiday in 1987 over to 88, and one of our friends had a house in the Yosemite Valley. We went up there. I did some cross-country skiing. Skiing on the East Coast is much different. When you ski on the East Coast, it's below freezing. On the West Coast, I was skiing in a t-shirt. So I was flopping all over the place at 10,000 feet. I was using wax on my skis, which at that point was pretty old school, and I was sticking to the snow. So I just found myself the biggest hill I could, and being about 200 pounds, I flew down that hill, managed to stay on my feet. But in any event, I get back to New York, and interestingly, in early January of 88, there was a huge blizzard. And I took out my cross-country skis where I was living up in 104th and Spanish Harlem, and I skied around Central Park down Fifth Avenue. It was so liberating to have New York humbled by a snowstorm. So the new year progresses, and my birthday's in January 20th. I met with my good buddy Stewie, and we had a little dinner and a couple of bottles of wine in Soho. And I was telling him how my job at the Better Business Bureau was good work, but I didn't enjoy it. It was public service. I didn't enjoy it. And over that second bottle of wine, the revelation occurred. All those wonderful people that I hung out with in California who were telling me, we're tired of your once-a-year visits, Stewie. We need you out here. So over that second bottle of wine, the plan congealed. I was going to give notice. I was going to pack up all my vinyl and books and head west. So we flash ahead a couple of months at taking care of all my business and housekeeping type chores. So my mom and stepdad Ed and my sister and my grandfather, Mr. J, Saul, we all have a dinner 2 nights before I'm going to go. It's kind of a farewell dinner. The folks have been really nice. They got me a new car to go out west in. And over dinner, we were talking about my planned adventure and move. And my grandfather asked me who I was going with. And I told him I was doing this myself. You see, because of all the hitchhiking I did, about 35,000 miles, I was really looking forward to the karmic return on this trip. I was going to pick people up. The car had a sunroof, had a bag of some good dome medicine, and I was going to be listening to James Brown, John Coltrane with the sunroof open and picking up hitchhikers. Well, the day after the family dinner, my grandfather calls me, and he says, "Hey, Stu, I was thinking, traveling alone, I'd like to take a ride with you." So I chuckle a little bit and I say, "Well, gee, Grandpa, that's really nice, but you know, I'm going on a 3,000 mile ride. It's not like Mayapack. And I'm not coming back, at least, you know, not for a while, you know, to visit." So my grandfather said, "Listen, I retired 14 years ago. What do I have to do?" So I initially said no, because I kind of knew that my grandfather, despite me being 32, I was still his grandson, and in his mind, I still needed company and perhaps some kind of supervision or whatever may have been going on in my concerned grandfather's mind. So as I said, I originally said no. And then I got off the phone and I started thinking about it the rest of the day. I mean, how many people have an 80-year-old grandfather that's basically offered to be their road dog? So I called my grandfather back up and I reconsidered after realizing that I'm lucky to be able to do that. So my grandfather and I get in the car. It's a big, beautiful station wagon, and I sent all my belongings through mail and moving, except I sure wasn't giving those suckers my vinyl or my stereo. So I took, you know, enough clothing, all my records, put them in the back of the car, and Grandpa and I head off cross country. The first night we stayed in Chicago, dumpy place, had some Chinese food. Grandpa insisted on paying for everything. That was part of his deal. So I think it was either the second or third day. We're in the Midwest. You know, you can see 2 states ahead. There's nothing but cornfields and flat road. So up until that point, there had been somewhat of a pattern. We would drive, have lunch. After lunch, Grandpa would pop Percodan and nod out against the passenger window. So one day, Grandpa asked me if he could drive. We were in the Midwest. Roads were flat, not a lot of traffic on Highway 80. So I thought, what the hell? He's got a driver's license. He's been driving longer than I've been alive. So that particular day, actually what I had been doing every day at lunch is, as I was going to the bathroom, I'd go out back and hit it a bit. So I had hit it at lunch that day, and if I was driving, I was going to be fine. But if I'm sitting in the passenger seat, I was the one who nodded out against the passenger window that day. So we're somewhere, I don't know, Nebraska, wherever. I wake up with my face plastered to the passenger window by sweat. And I don't move my head, but I shift my eyes over. And I look at the speedometer. And Grandpa's going like 104, 105. So, you know, I want to be cool. So I say, Grandpa, going a little fast, aren't you? He turns to me and he says, oh, Stu, you're up. This car is way better than the last car. I was up to 114 a few minutes ago. So, you know, I didn't want to be an ununderstanding parent. So I said, okay, great, but, you know, might as well slow down a little. So, you know, we had a nice time. We progressed cross country. As we get to the end of our destination, Highway 80, crossing the Bay Bridge from Oakland into San Francisco, Grandpa tells me that actually we're going to continue through to Palo Alto. Grandpa's twin sister Lee had either moved out here or been exiled by the family. I never quite got the story exactly, but Lee is a school teacher in Palo Alto. So we drive right down to Palo Alto, go into Lee's apartment, and Grandpa uses the restroom, and he comes out and without any hesitation gets on the phone and makes a plane reservation back the next day. I was very upset because my friend Bobby knew Grandpa from camp. We'd been fishing together, and I knew that there was a great casting pond in Golden Gate Park, and Bobby had a 2,500 square foot apartment. We were going to hang out with Grandpa for a few days, so I was a little upset. I think he yanked a tear or two out. Grandpa went back. But what was hysterical, I left it out of the narrative a little bit. When we were coming across the Bay Bridge, my grandfather turned to me, and in a tone of summation, I guess, of our trip, he said, you know, Stu, I've never been across this country before, and it's quite the country. Sometimes I felt like I was in heaven. Sometimes I felt like I was in hell. And other times it was like I was on another planet. I smiled and I looked at him and I said, Grandpa, sometimes you are on another planet. And that was it. Grandpa went back to New York, and here it is, almost 28 years later, and I'm a Californian now.
Great.